My name is Lena Navarro, and for most of my 36 years, I believed that family was a harbor, a safe port in the swirling waters of life. It took my daughter's 16th birthday, a day that should have been filled with light and laughter, to teach me that sometimes the harbor is the storm. I can still see the moment with a painful, crystalline clarity, the way Zoe's new drawing tablet, her most treasured possession, slipped from my sister's grasp. I can still hear the sharp crack as its screen met the iron balcony railing, a sound that echoed the shattering of my faith in the people I was supposed to trust most. What followed was a quiet, cold devastation far worse than any shouting match. My sister, with our parents' solemn agreement, called for a welfare check on my 16-year-old daughter, painting a picture of a troubled, unstable girl. And the deepest wound of all was watching my own parents, my mother and father, sign the official report, their faces masks of misguided concern, solidifying a lie that would alter the landscape of our lives forever. Before I walk you through the quiet devastation of that day and the slow, steady path we found through the wreckage, I want to say that if you've ever had to shield your child from the people who were meant to protect them, you are not alone. This is our story of finding our own light when the familiar lamps went out. To understand the weight of that day, you need to understand the quiet world Zoe and I had built for ourselves in the little town of Havenwood. 5 years ago, my marriage to Zoe's father, Evan, unraveled. He was a man who chased horizons, and one day he decided our little life was too small a sky for him. He moved west, searching for a version of himself that didn't include fatherhood, leaving me to raise our daughter on my own. It wasn't a tragedy, not really, but a quiet recalibration. I was a freelance textile artist, weaving stories into fabric from a small studio attached to our cottage. Life was a tapestry of careful budgeting and creative problem-solving, but we made it work. Our days were filled with the scent of dye pots and chamomile tea, and our home was a sanctuary of soft light and softer music. My sister, Brenda, is 4 years my senior, and she navigates the world in a way that is entirely foreign to me. She is a corporate lawyer in the city, her life a fortress of sharp angles, tailored suits, and measurable achievements. Growing up, our differences were a source of simple friction. If I brought home a painting, she brought home a trophy. But as we grew older, her competitiveness softened into a more pervasive form of judgment, always cloaked in the guise of concern. Though she had no children of her own, she had an abundance of opinions on how I was raising Zoe. "Are you sure this freelance life offers enough stability for her, Lena?" she'd ask during our infrequent family dinners, her gaze sweeping over my hand-dyed dress. Or, "Zoe is so quiet. You should encourage her to be more assertive, more like me." The truth was, Zoe was a gift. She was a thoughtful, introspective teenager who had inherited my love for art and her father's gentle spirit. She maintained excellent grades, volunteered at the Havenwood Community Garden on weekends, and had started a small online shop selling her digital art prints to save for a better computer. She was kind, deeply empathetic, and was navigating the complexities of adolescence with a grace I had never possessed at her age. But in Brenda's eyes, Zoe's quiet nature was a flaw, her artistic pursuits a frivolous distraction from the real world. Our parents, Robert and Judith, complicated the dynamic. They lived in a pristine suburban home where the carpets were always vacuumed and emotions were kept neatly folded away. They admired Brenda's tangible success, the salary, the promotions, the downtown apartment, and were quietly anxious about my more precarious, artistic path. Their favoritism was a gentle but constant pressure, like the steady drip of a leaky faucet. Dad, a retired engineer, audited Brenda's complex investment portfolio for free but would send me articles on budgeting for creatives. Mom, who spoke to Brenda daily, would call me on holidays, her conversation filled with news of Brenda's latest triumph. I maintained the connection for Zoe. Despite their blind spots, they were her only grandparents, and I wanted her to have that thread of family history, however frayed it was. They contributed to a college fund for her, a gesture of love that I knew also served as their leverage, a way to ensure we remained in their orbit. I believed I could manage the delicate balance, containing the toxicity within the confines of holiday dinners and brief phone calls. Just let it roll off your back, my best friend, Tessa, would advise. You know how they are. And I tried. For years, I smiled through Brenda's critiques and my parents' subtle slights. When Brenda suggested Zoe's art was a bit morbid for a teenager, I would politely change the subject. When my parents gave Brenda a European vacation for her birthday and me a gift certificate to a craft store, I expressed my gratitude with sincerity and moved on. But in the months before Zoe's 16th birthday, the pressure began to build. Brenda had just gone through a bitter divorce, and it seemed to curdle her concern into something sharper. She started commenting on Zoe's clothes when she'd reach for a second helping of potatoes at Sunday dinner. She criticized the friends Zoe brought to the community garden, calling them aimless. During one family visit, she scrolled through Zoe's online art portfolio on her phone, showing my parents a charcoal sketch of a leafless tree. "See what I mean?" she'd whispered to them. "It's so bleak." 2 weeks before the party, I attempted to draw a clearer boundary. I called Brenda on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. "I know you love Zoe, and I appreciate that," I began, my words chosen as carefully as threads for a new weaving. "But some of your comments have been difficult for her lately. I was hoping we could all just focus on celebrating her for who she is at the party." Her response was as crisp and cold as an autumn morning. "I'm just being realistic, Lena. Someone has to be. You treat her like a friend, not a daughter. One day, you'll thank me for trying to guide her." I should have heard the warning in her voice, the tremor of the coming earthquake. But I was too focused on creating a perfect day for Zoe. I'd been saving for months, setting aside a small portion from every commission to rent the Old Mill Arts Loft, a beautiful, rustic space on the banks of the Havenwood River. I'd ordered a custom-made cake with layers of her favorite lemon and lavender, decorated with delicate, edible wildflowers. I'd even hired a young photography student from the local college to capture the memories. Zoe was especially excited about her main gift. For over a year, she had been saving every dollar from her art sales and her part-time job at the local bookstore. She had her heart set on a professional-grade digital drawing tablet, a tool that would open up new worlds for her art. I had promised to pay for whatever remaining balance there was as my gift to her. She researched models for weeks, handled the display units at the electronics store with reverence, and talked endlessly about the projects she would create. It wasn't just an object, it was a key to her future. The night before her party, Zoe helped me load boxes of handmade decorations into the car, her eyes shining with an almost painful brightness. "Do you think it will be perfect, Mom?" she asked, carefully placing a string of paper lanterns into a box. "It's going to be wonderful," I promised, wrapping my arms around her. "You deserve all the wonderful things." I truly believed it. I thought, for one day, everyone could set aside their issues and simply celebrate the incredible young woman my daughter was becoming. I was so beautifully, heartbreakingly wrong. The Old Mill Arts Loft, with its worn brick walls and soaring wooden beams, was transformed. Zoe had chosen a theme of enchanted forest, and together we had hung garlands of ivy and fairy lights from the rafters. Handmade paper lanterns cast a warm, golden glow over everything, and on each table, we had placed small jars of wildflowers from our garden. A playlist of her favorite indie folk music drifted softly from the speakers as the photography student, a kind young woman named Paige, tested the light. "Mom, it's even better than I imagined," Zoe whispered, giving me a quick, tight hug. She looked lovely and ethereal in a deep green velvet dress, her long, dark hair braided with tiny white flowers. At 16, she was nearly as tall as I was, but in that moment, I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap with a sketchbook, her small fingers smudged with charcoal. Her friends arrived first, a warm, lively group of kids who immediately pitched in to help. Her best friend, Leo, started organizing the gift table while others helped light the candles. These were the children who had grown up alongside Zoe, sharing paints and secrets in our little cottage. I watched them laugh and take photos, my heart swelling with a quiet pride. Brenda arrived 20 minutes later, a stark, architectural figure in a charcoal gray pantsuit that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. She carried a large, sleekly wrapped box. "The venue has a certain rustic charm," she said, her eyes scanning the space as if looking for structural weaknesses. "I suppose it's fine for a teenager." "Zoe loves it," I said, refusing to let her dim the mood. "Thank you for coming." "I got her something practical," Brenda announced, placing her gift in the very center of the table, eclipsing the smaller, more personal offerings from Zoe's friends. "A designer leather briefcase. It's never too early to start thinking about a real career." I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, but forced myself to breathe it out. Zoe had specifically requested no extravagant gifts, asking friends to instead consider a donation to the local animal shelter or a contribution to her new computer fund. But engaging with Brenda now would only cast a shadow on the day. Zoe came over to greet her aunt, her smile warm and genuine. "Aunt Brenda, thank you so much for coming. You look amazing." "You as well." "Although, perhaps a blazer over that dress would be more appropriate," Brenda replied, her gaze critical. "And are you wearing makeup? It makes you look much older." Zoe's smile wavered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered gracefully. "Just a little tinted lip balm. Mom said it was okay." "Of course she did," Brenda murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. More guests filled the space, and soon the loft was humming with happy chatter. My parents arrived 45 minutes late, making a beeline for Brenda and enveloping her in hugs before giving Zoe a brief, formal greeting. "You're growing up so quickly," my mother said, patting Zoe's arm with a touch that was more inspection than affection. "Your aunt found the most wonderful gift for you. I'm sure you'll love it." The party moved forward with a gentle rhythm. There was food and dancing, and Zoe opened her gifts with sincere appreciation for each one. The briefcase from Brenda was met with a polite, "Wow, thank you, Aunt Brenda. It's very professional." But her face truly lit up when she opened the last, large box from me, revealing the sleek, new drawing tablet she had coveted for so long. She hugged it to her chest, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. "Thank you." Throughout the evening, I was acutely aware of Brenda watching Zoe's every move. She frowned when Zoe and Leo laughed too loudly over a shared joke. She sighed dramatically when Zoe spent more than a few minutes talking to one group of friends. "This music is rather dreary, isn't it?" I overheard her say to my parents. "And look how she gravitates to that boy. Lena is far too permissive." The boy in question was Leo, her best friend since kindergarten, who was gay and had been dating his boyfriend for a year. They were discussing a collaborative art project. As Zoe demonstrated the new tablet to her friends, showing them the different digital brushes and pressure sensitivities, Brenda materialized at my elbow. "So attached to her screens," she said sharply. "In my day, we experienced life directly, not through a digital filter." "She's sharing her passion with her friends, Brenda," I said calmly. "It's a beautiful thing to see. There's nothing beautiful about teenagers isolating themselves with technology," she sniffed, turning back to my parents, who nodded in solemn agreement. The cake was a triumph, a 3-tiered lemon and lavender confection adorned with crystallized violets. As everyone gathered to sing "Happy Birthday," I saw a single, happy tear trace a path down Zoe's cheek. Despite the undercurrent of tension, she was having her moment. "Make a wish, my love," I murmured as she prepared to blow out the candles. Just as she took a deep breath, Brenda's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the melody. "The cake looks a little amateur, Lena. You should have asked me to order one from that patisserie downtown." It would have been more refined. A wave of uncomfortable silence rippled through the guests. Zoe pretended not to hear, closed her eyes, and made her wish, extinguishing all 16 candles in a single puff. The applause was perhaps a little too loud, a collective effort to smooth over the jagged edge of the moment. As I was slicing the cake, Zoe's phone, an older model she used for calls and texts, buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and looked up at me apologetically. "It's Sarah," she explained. Sarah was her other best friend, who was home with a bad case of mononucleosis and was heartbroken to be missing the party. "Do you mind if I take this on the balcony? She wants to see the river at night." "Of course, honey. Tell her we're all thinking of her." Zoe slipped out the tall glass doors onto the small, wrought iron balcony that overlooked the river. I watched her for a moment, saw her smile as she talked to her friend, turning the phone to show her the moonlight on the water. What I failed to notice was Brenda, setting her plate of untouched cake down and following my daughter outside. Through the glass, I saw Zoe's animated face, her hands gesturing as she talked. She looked so happy, so at peace in that moment, bathed in the soft glow of the party lights and the moon. I turned back to hand a slice of cake to one of Zoe's friends, not realizing that on the other side of the glass, the storm was about to break. Later, Zoe would recount the details to me, her voice a monotone of shock. "Sarah was telling me how she was decorating her room to pass the time," she'd said, "and I was showing her my dress and the lights when Aunt Brenda came out onto the balcony." Brenda had approached with her arms crossed, her expensive heels clicking an aggressive rhythm on the flagstones. "This is a party, Zoe, not a private phone call," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "It's incredibly rude to abandon your guests to play on your phone." Zoe lowered her phone slightly but kept Sarah on the line. "I'm just talking to Sarah, Aunt Brenda. She's really sick and couldn't come. I'll be right back in." "Who is this Sarah?" Brenda demanded, her tone implying that Zoe was engaged in some illicit conversation. "My best friend," Zoe replied, her voice laced with confusion. "You've met her a dozen times. She has mono. Mom knows I'm out here." At that moment, Zoe spotted her new drawing tablet on a small table near the door where she'd left it. "Oh, Sarah, I have to show you what my mom got me," she said, ending the call with a quick goodbye and picking up the tablet. But Brenda stepped in front of her, blocking her path back inside. "Let me see that device," she said. "I want to see what kind of art you're really making." "What?" "No," Zoe said, taken aback. "It's just my sketches. It's private." She clutched the tablet to her chest, a protective gesture that seemed to infuriate Brenda. "Your mother lets you hide away in your own little world, but I know what teenagers are like." "What are you hiding, Zoe? Disturbing drawings? Inappropriate messages?" "I'm not hiding anything," Zoe replied, her voice beginning to tremble. "But it's my personal work. Mom respects my privacy because she trusts me." "Trust," Brenda scoffed, her face twisting into a mask of scorn. "Your mother's trust is just another word for neglect." That was the word, the trigger. The accusation that Lena's gentle parenting was, in fact, harmful. With a sudden, swift movement, Brenda lunged forward and snatched the tablet from Zoe's hands. "Aunt Brenda, stop!" Zoe cried out, reaching for it. "Give it back." Brenda held it away from her, her thumb swiping angrily across the screen, trying to unlock it. "Let's just see what's so important you have to hide it from your family." "Please," Zoe begged, tears welling in her eyes. "I saved for a year for that. Please don't." What happened next was a blur of calculated cruelty. Brenda, her face a mask of self-righteous fury, held the tablet aloft for a moment. Then, with a deliberate, forceful motion, she brought it down against the iron railing of the balcony. The sharp crack of the screen breaking was followed by Zoe's horrified gasp. The device then slipped from her hand, falling the few feet to the stone patio below, where it shattered completely. "There," Brenda said, breathing heavily as she stared down at the ruined tablet. Sometimes you have to destroy an idol to save a soul. You'll thank me one day. Zoe sank to her knees, carefully gathering the broken pieces. The screen was a spider web of fractures, the casing split open. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed the power button, a hopeless, desperate gesture. "Why?" she whispered, her voice broken. "Why would you do that?" It was the sound of that single, whispered word that finally pierced the bubble of the party and drew my attention. I pushed through the glass doors and the scene before me froze the air in my lungs. My daughter, kneeling on the cold stone, sobbing over the wreckage of her dream, and my sister standing over her, her posture radiating a terrifying, triumphant calm. "What on earth happened?" I demanded, rushing to Zoe's side. I confronted her about what she was hiding on this thing, Brenda announced before Zoe could even form a word. She became hysterical and dropped it. "It seems I touched a nerve." "She's lying," Zoe choked out, looking up at me with eyes full of betrayal. "She took it from me." "She smashed it, Mom. She did it on purpose." I helped Zoe to her feet, my gaze falling on the destroyed tablet. This was not the result of an accidental drop. This was intentional damage, inflicted with force and malice. "Brenda, did you break Zoe's tablet?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I took a necessary step," Brenda replied, her chin held high. "If you knew the kind of dark, depressive things she was drawing, you would understand." I was trying to help. "It was my passion," Zoe whispered. "It was everything." "She was messaging strange men online," Brenda declared suddenly, her lie growing more elaborate. "I saw it." This was so far from the truth it was nonsensical. I knew every corner of Zoe's small, innocent online world. We had an open-door policy with her technology, a system built on the mutual respect Brenda could never comprehend. "That is an absolute lie," I said, my voice shaking with a cold rage. "You had no right to touch her property, let alone destroy it." Brenda's face flushed. "You are so willfully blind, Lena. But don't worry. I'm not going to let you fail her." With that, she turned on her heel and swept back into the loft, ready to spin her venomous fairy tale to our parents and anyone else who would listen. I stayed on the balcony with Zoe, holding her as she wept, not just for the broken tablet, but for the violent, inexplicable hatred that had just been aimed at her heart on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her young life. "I'm so sorry, my love," I whispered, feeling the tremors of her sobs run through me. "We will fix this." "Why does she hate me so much?" Zoe asked, her voice small and broken. I had no answer. I only had the hollow, sinking feeling that the storm had not yet passed. After a few minutes on the cold balcony, wrapped in my arms, Zoe's sobs subsided into shudders. I helped her wipe her face and tuck the broken pieces of the tablet into her small handbag, a relic of a dream that had lasted only a few hours. "Let's go back inside," I said gently. "Don't let her have the satisfaction of ruining your entire night. Your friends are here for you." Zoe nodded, her young face set with a resolve that broke my heart. "Okay, Mom. I'll try." We stepped back through the glass doors into a changed world. The gentle folk music had been turned off. The happy hum of conversation had dwindled to hushed whispers. Small groups of guests stood in awkward clusters, their eyes darting towards us and then away. At the center of the room, Brenda stood with our parents, her hands gesturing dramatically as she recounted her fabricated version of events. My mother's face was a mask of horror, my father's a grim line of disapproval. As we approached, the conversation stopped abruptly. My mother looked at Zoe, not with sympathy, but with a cold, searching disappointment. My father couldn't meet my eyes. "Lena," my mother said, her voice stiff and formal. "We need to speak with you. Privately. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Zoe," I replied, my voice steady. I placed a protective hand on my daughter's back. "This concerns her more than anyone." Brenda stepped forward, crossing her arms. "Your daughter has been creating deeply disturbing, violent art. and she's been in contact with older men online. I saw the messages before she had her episode. A few audible gasps came from the parents of Zoe's friends who were still lingering. Zoe's face, already pale, lost all its remaining color. "That is a vicious lie," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that silenced the whispers. Brenda became enraged when Zoe wouldn't let her invade her privacy. She destroyed a very expensive gift, and now she is inventing these fantasies to justify her appalling behavior. "I saw it," Brenda insisted, turning to our parents for support. "Tell her, Mom, Dad. Tell her how worried we've been for months about Zoe's withdrawn behavior." My father cleared his throat, a sound heavy with discomfort. "Your sister is just looking out for Zoe's well-being, Lena. Perhaps if you were more involved in her digital life." "I am completely involved," I cut in, my patience wearing thin. "We have an open and honest relationship about it. There has never been anything remotely inappropriate." "You're in denial," my mother said, her voice like ice. "Brenda has always had sounder judgment in these matters." I stared at them, a chasm of disbelief opening up inside me. They were choosing to believe this theatrical, monstrous lie about their own granddaughter, without a shred of proof, without even asking Zoe for her side of the story. Around us, the party was dissolving. Parents were quietly gathering their children, offering murmured apologies and casting suspicious glances at my daughter. "Mrs. Navarro, I think we'll get going," one mother said, avoiding my eyes. "It's getting late." The party was over. The beautiful, enchanted forest we had created now felt like a stage set for a tragedy. The half-eaten cake, the wilting flowers, the scattered gifts, it was all a monument to a joy that had been deliberately extinguished. What Brenda did next was so far beyond the pale of normal human behavior that it felt like a scene from a surrealist film. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling for a welfare check," she announced to the room. A heavy silence fell. "A welfare check?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "For what possible reason?" "A minor who is creating disturbing material, is in contact with unknown adults, and who destroys property in a violent outburst is clearly a danger to herself," Brenda declared, her voice filled with a chilling, clinical authority. "As her aunt, I have a duty to seek professional intervention." "You are unwell, Brenda," I said, stepping between her and Zoe. "You're projecting your own issues onto a child." But she was already speaking into the phone, her back to us. "Yes, I'd like to request a welfare check at the Old Mill Arts loft on River Street. My niece, Zoe Navarro. She's 16. Yes, she's exhibiting signs of being a danger to herself. Her mother seems unable to control the situation." I turned to my parents, my last hope dwindling. "Mom, Dad, for God's sake, stop her. You know Zoe. You know this isn't true. If Brenda feels this is necessary, then it's necessary," my father stated, placing a hand on Brenda's shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. "Sometimes love has to be tough." Zoe began to tremble violently beside me. "Grandma, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't do anything." My mother looked at her, her expression unyielding. "This is for your own good, Zoe. We have to get you help." 20 of the longest minutes of my life later, 2 uniformed police officers walked into the loft. The remaining guests scattered like startled birds, leaving only my family, Zoe's 2 closest friends who refused to leave her side, and the stunned young photographer, Paige, who was quietly documenting the entire scene with her camera. Officer Grant, an older man with weary, compassionate eyes, separated us. He spoke with Brenda and my parents, while his younger, more by-the-book partner, Officer Kim, approached Zoe and me. I refused to let them question Zoe alone. "My aunt is lying," Zoe explained, her voice remarkably steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "She broke my drawing tablet because I wouldn't let her look through it. Now she's making things up." Officer Kim looked at the broken tablet I held. "And your aunt claims there was disturbing content on this device?" "There was not," I said firmly. There were sketches of landscapes, character designs for a story she's writing, and portraits of her friends. I would be happy to have the hard drive recovered to prove it. Across the room, I could see Brenda speaking with conviction, my parents nodding along, their faces etched with grave concern. I overheard Officer Grant saying to his partner, "Can't verify anything with the device destroyed. Sounds like a family dispute that got way out of hand." He approached us. "Mrs. Navarro, we can't substantiate any of your sister's claims. Without evidence, this appears to be a civil matter regarding the destruction of property, not a criminal one requiring a welfare hold." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was premature. However, he continued, his expression apologetic, "Your sister and your parents are insisting on filing a formal report of their concerns for your daughter's welfare. They are willing to sign sworn statements about what they claim to have observed." "But they didn't observe anything," I protested. "My parents weren't even on the balcony. They are believing a lie and putting it on official record." "I understand, ma'am," Officer Grant said, his tone weary. "But we are required to document their report. It doesn't mean we credit their story, but it will go on file." And so I stood and watched the unthinkable. My sister, my mother, and my father huddled with Officer Kim, signing their names to an official document that painted my daughter as unstable and my parenting as negligent. They were creating a permanent record based on a foundation of pure fiction. "Mom, what does this mean?" Zoe whispered, her hand gripping my arm. "It means nothing," I assured her, my own heart pounding with a helpless rage. "It's just paper with lies written on it." But the symbolism of their signatures, the deliberate, final act of choosing sides, was a wound that would never fully heal. The officers finally left after giving me a card with a case number. The party was over. My family had departed without another word, a unified front of righteousness. As Zoe's friends gave her tearful hugs and their parents offered me looks of deep sympathy, we were left alone in the silent, decorated loft. Zoe sank into a chair amidst the remnants of her ruined celebration. "That was the worst day of my life," she said, her voice flat. I knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in mine. "I am so sorry, my love. I never, ever would have let them come if I thought they were capable of this." Her next words struck me to the core. "It wasn't about the tablet, was it, Mom? It was about me." As I held my daughter in the ruins of her 16th birthday, something inside me shifted. The confusion and the hurt gave way to a cold, hard clarity. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not over-the-top concern. This was a deliberate act of cruelty. And it would be the last one. I didn't know how yet, but I knew with every fiber of my being that I would spend the rest of my life building a wall of love and safety around my daughter so high that their shadows could never touch her again. The morning after the party, the gray light of dawn felt heavy and oppressive. My phone lay on the kitchen counter, buzzing with a quiet insistence. Text from my parents. "Mom, we need to discuss a therapeutic plan for Zoe. This can't be ignored." "Dad, Brenda was only trying to help. You need to call us when you're ready to be rational." "Mom, we expect an apology from you and Zoe for your hostile behavior towards the officers." I read the messages, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. It was as if they had witnessed an entirely different event, a story they had co-authored with Brenda in which they were the heroes and we were the ungrateful antagonists. There was no mention of the destroyed tablet, the public humiliation, the lies. Zoe was a ghost at the breakfast table, pushing a piece of toast around her plate. "Are the police going to come to our house?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "No, my love." "Absolutely not," I reassured her, my own voice firmer than I felt. "Their report was based on lies, and there is no evidence because nothing happened. But I think we need some help figuring out how to respond to this." While Zoe took a long, hot shower, I called Tessa. Her husband, Mark, was a lawyer who specialized in contract law but had a brilliant, logical mind. I recounted the entire night, my voice breaking only once when I described my parents signing the report. "First things first, Lena, Write everything down, Mark advised when Tessa passed the phone to him. Every single detail while it's fresh. Have Zoe do the same if she feels up to it. Save those texts from your parents. This is about creating your own record, a clear, factual narrative. What about the police report? I asked, the fear I'd been suppressing for Zoe's sake finally seeping into my voice. It's unlikely to go anywhere, Mark said, his calm tone a balm. They documented a welfare concern, which is subjective. But to be safe, we can draft a formal response from you. A counterstatement for the record, outlining the facts, including the destruction of property and the presence of a witness, the photographer. I had forgotten about Paige, the photography student. I found her number and called, my hands trembling slightly. Paige, it's Lena Navarro, I began. I was hoping you'd call, she said immediately. I'm so sorry about what happened to Zoe. It was awful. And, for what it's worth, I have photos. Of your sister grabbing the tablet, of the argument on the balcony, of her and your parents talking to the police. It's all on the memory card. Tears of gratitude pricked my eyes. Paige, you have no idea what that means. Can I pay you for your time and for copies of those photos? No, she said firmly. Consider it a gift. Just promise you'll use them to protect your daughter. That afternoon, while Zoe found solace in the quiet company of her friend Leo, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and began to write. The words poured out of me, a torrent of memories and slights I had minimized for years. I documented Brenda's escalating criticism, my parents' subtle manipulations, the financial gifts that always came with strings. A pattern emerged, stark and undeniable. This wasn't about Zoe's well-being. It was about control. Brenda could not tolerate Zoe's quiet confidence. My parents could not accept a version of family that didn't revolve around their values. Their love was a conditional, transactional thing, and we had finally broken the terms of the contract. I spent the evening researching, falling down a rabbit hole of articles and forums about complex family trauma and estrangement. The stories of others, parents who had made the agonizing choice to cut contact with toxic relatives, resonated with a painful familiarity. One sentence lodged in my heart: protecting your child is your primary duty. If that means protecting them from your own family, then that is the path you must walk. The next day, I made an appointment with a financial advisor. The college fund my parents had established for Zoe now felt less like a gift and more like a chain. We can open a new custodial account in your name only, the advisor, a kind woman named Diane, explained. We can transfer the funds you've personally contributed and start fresh. It will give you complete control. It meant the fund would be smaller. It meant I would have to take on more commissions, work longer hours. But the thought of their money no longer holding power over us felt like a deep, cleansing breath. That week, I accepted a large, demanding commission from a boutique hotel chain, a project that would mean late nights at my loom, but would secure our financial independence. Zoe noticed the change in my schedule. "Mom, you're working all the time," she said one night, her voice laced with worry. "You don't have to do this because of me. This isn't because of you, my love," I said, pulling her into a hug. "This is for us. This is me buying our freedom." A week after the party, the situation escalated. The principal of Zoe's school called me. Mrs. Navarro, a woman identifying herself as Zoe's aunt, is in the front office demanding to see her. A cold dread washed over me. "Do not let her see Zoe," I said, my voice sharp. "I'm on my way." When I arrived, Brenda was in a heated argument with the school secretary. "I am her aunt. I have a right to be concerned about her welfare." "Actually, you don't," I said, stepping between them. I handed the principal a freshly printed document. "This is an updated emergency contact and approved visitor list. As you can see, Brenda's name has been removed." Brenda's face turned a mottled shade of red. "This is absurd. I'll be telling Mom and Dad about this." "I'm sure you will," I replied, my voice a calm, flat line. That same afternoon, with Mark's guidance and Paige's photos as evidence, I filed for a temporary restraining order against Brenda, citing her escalating harassment and the destruction of property. It felt like a drastic, unnatural step, but her appearance at the school had made it clear she would not respect any boundary I set verbally. The inevitable call from my parents came that night. I put the phone on speaker, having already prepared Zoe for what was coming. Restraining order, Lena?" My father's voice boomed. "Have you lost your mind?" "No, I've found my footing," I replied calmly. "Brenda has harassed my daughter, destroyed her property, filed a false report against her, and then showed up at her school uninvited. Her behavior is not stable, and I will not allow her near Zoe. She is worried sick about her niece," my mother cried. "You're twisting everything to turn Zoe against this family." "I'm not turning her against anyone," I corrected. "I am protecting her from a family that has shown it is not safe for her. You had a chance to protect her at the party. You both chose to participate in the attack." A tense silence followed. Then, my father played his final card. "If you continue down this vindictive path, we will be forced to take action. We'll remove you from our will. We'll cut you both off completely." I had been expecting it. "That is your choice to make," I said, my voice unwavering. "But let me be clear. No inheritance is worth my daughter's mental health and safety. Our well-being is not for sale." After I hung up, Zoe looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Did they just disown us?" "No, sweet girl," I said, pulling her close. "They made a choice about who they are. And we're making a choice about who we are. And I promise you, we will be more than okay." The weeks that followed were a blur of quiet determination. Zoe started seeing a therapist, a wonderful woman named Dr. Eva Rostova, who helped her untangle the complex feelings of grief and betrayal. "Your daughter has incredible inner strength," Dr. Rostova told me during a consultation. "The most important thing for her now is to know, without a doubt, that you are her rock. That your protection is unconditional." With that in mind, I sat down and composed one final email to my parents and Brenda. "I have given this situation a great deal of thought. Any possibility of a future relationship is dependent on the following conditions being met: a full, written acknowledgement of the events of Zoe's party, including the destruction of her property and the filing of a false report. A sincere, direct apology to Zoe for the emotional harm and public humiliation caused. A commitment from all of you to participate in family counseling with a neutral third-party professional to address these toxic dynamics. Until these conditions are met, we will be taking an indefinite period of no contact. Zoe's emotional safety is my only priority. The choice of whether you wish to have a healthy, respectful relationship with us or no relationship at all is now yours." Their response was a profound and telling silence. No angry rebuttal. No defense. No apology. Just nothing. And in that silence, our new life began. A life without the family I was born into, but with the family we were now consciously creating. A family of supportive friends, of understanding professionals, and most importantly, a family of two. A mother and daughter bound by a love that had been tested by fire and had emerged, not unscathed, but stronger and more true than ever before. "We're going to be okay, Mom," Zoe said one evening a month later, as we planted new herbs in our window box. "Actually," she said, looking up at me with a small, sure smile, "I think we already are." And as I looked at my daughter, her hands deep in the rich soil, her face turned towards the sun, I knew she was right. We absolutely were. The seasons turned, painting Havenwood in new colors, and our lives found a new, quieter rhythm. We moved to a small rented house on the other side of town, a little farther from my parents, a little closer to the woods. The change of scenery felt like a tangible manifestation of our new beginning. The air felt lighter there. Zoe, with a quiet determination that filled me with pride, had saved up and bought herself a new, even better drawing tablet. "This one is all mine," she told me, her eyes shining. No strings attached. The art she created on it was vibrant and full of life, her digital canvases filled with fantastical creatures and luminous landscapes. The darkness Brenda had claimed to see was never there. It had only been a reflection of her own. My commission for the hotel chain was a success, leading to more work and a level of financial stability I had never known. The long hours had been an investment in our autonomy, and the peace of mind it brought was priceless. We had enough, not just for the necessities, but for small joys, a weekend trip to the coast to watch the waves crash, canvases and expensive paints for Zoe, a ridiculously comfortable armchair for our new reading nook. The 6-month restraining order against Brenda expired without incident. We learned through Tessa that my parents had paid for Brenda to attend a wellness retreat in Arizona. There was no acknowledgement of the harm she had caused, only a reframing of her actions as a cry for help. Then, on a crisp autumn afternoon nearly a year after the party, an unexpected email appeared in my inbox. It was from my mother. The subject line was simply, "Thinking of you. Lena," the message read, "Your father and I have been talking a lot. We miss you. We miss Zoe. We were wrong. I don't know if you can ever forgive us, but we would like to try to earn back your trust. We have started seeing a counselor. If you are willing, she has suggested we write you a letter. Would you be willing to receive it?" I read the email 3 times, my heart beating a cautious, uncertain rhythm. I showed it to Zoe, making it clear that this was my decision to make, that she was under no obligation to engage at all. She was quiet for a long time, looking out the window at the rust-colored leaves falling from the oak tree in our new yard. "What do you want to do, Mom?" she asked finally. I thought about the past year, the pain, the struggle, the fear, but also the quiet triumphs, the profound peace, the strength we had found. I was no longer the woman who would accept crumbs of affection to keep a fractured family together. I was a woman who knew her worth and my daughter's worth. "I think," I said slowly, "I'm willing to read a letter." The letter arrived a week later. It was handwritten, 12 pages long, with passages from both my mother and my father. It was not a perfect letter. It was filled with clumsy expressions of regret, with moments of defensiveness that showed how deeply ingrained their old patterns were. But scattered throughout were glimmers of something new: accountability. "We believed Brenda because it was easier," my father wrote. "It fit the narrative we had built where she was successful and you were struggling. We see now that we were the ones who were struggling to accept a family that didn't look the way we thought it should. I see your face in my mind, Lena," my mother wrote, "when you watched us sign that report. I have to look away from the memory. I betrayed you. I betrayed my granddaughter. I let my fear and my pride blind me to the beautiful, kind, wonderful person she is. I am so sorry." They wrote about their counseling sessions, about the painful work of untangling their own family histories, and the favoritism that had poisoned our relationships. They made no excuses for Brenda, acknowledging that she was on her own path and they could no longer enable her destructive behavior. The letter ended with a simple, humble request: "We don't expect to be let back in overnight. But we hope, in time, you will let us show you that we can learn to love you both in the way you deserve to be loved." Tears streamed down my face as I read. They were not tears of forgiveness, not yet. They were tears of grief for the years we had lost, but also tears of a fragile, nascent hope. I did not write back immediately. I sat with the letter for weeks, letting the words settle. Zoe and I talked about it, not as a problem to be solved, but as a new chapter to be considered. "I'm not ready to see them," she said honestly. "But I'm glad they're trying. For you." My eventual reply was short and honest. "Thank you for your letter. I acknowledge the work you are doing. Healing is a long road. Let's take it one step at a time." Our conclusion, then, is not a grand reunion around a holiday table. It is not an ending, but a new, uncertain beginning. The harbor I once believed in was, indeed, the storm. But storms pass. They clear the air. They wash the landscape clean, and in the aftermath, if you are patient and brave, new things can grow. The family we have now is smaller, quieter, but infinitely more authentic. It is built of friends like Tessa and Mark, of kind neighbors, of Zoe's loyal, creative friends. It is built on a foundation of mutual respect and unconditional love. And at its heart is the unshakable bond between a mother and daughter who walked through the fire together and learned to build a home in the warmth of their own light. The path to healing is not about forgetting. It is about integrating our stories, our wounds, into who we are and choosing to grow around them, like a tree around a scar in its bark, stronger at the broken places. My hope for anyone navigating a similar storm is that you find the courage to steer your own ship, to seek out calmer waters, and to trust that you are worthy of a safe harbor, even and especially if you have to build it yourself.